Most people believe wealth begins when you earn more, but the Bible teaches something radically different. True prosperity starts when you learn to manage what you already have. Before God gives you wealth, He gives you wisdom. Before He increases your balance, He measures your discipline. And hidden within Scripture lies a principle so practical and so powerful that even financial experts echo it without realizing it's biblical. It's called the $10,000 principle. This principle isn't about luxury or status. It's about alignment. It's about reaching the point where your faith and your finances finally agree. The first $10,000 you save or manage correctly becomes more than a number. It's the proof that your heart, mind, and habits are walking in step with God's divine order. You stop praying for miracles you can't maintain and start living as a partner in God's economy. That's when heaven starts to trust you with more. Now, let's be clear. This message isn't for those chasing quick riches. It's for believers who want to understand how divine strategy builds lasting success. God isn't interested in blessing unprepared hands. He's looking for people who understand that money is not a destination. It's a divine assignment. Once you grasp this truth, the way you see saving, giving, and investing will change forever. If you like our content, consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description, because what you're about to discover may completely redefine your idea of wealth. The Bible doesn't just teach how to make money, it teaches how to become the kind of person God can trust with it. And when that transformation begins, even $10,000 can carry eternal impact. The hidden pattern of God's financial principles. When people think about wealth, they often imagine sudden blessings or overnight success stories. But God's financial principles don't follow the world's shortcuts. They follow divine order. The Bible reveals that prosperity begins not with abundance, but with alignment. Putting first things first. Just like creation followed a precise sequence before man ever worked the ground, wealth also flows from structure, discipline, and divine timing. Before God gives increase, He establishes foundations. In Genesis, God didn't hand Adam riches. He gave him responsibility, a garden to tend, and a mission to fulfill. This reveals a powerful truth. God always tests stewardship before He releases overflow. Many believers pray for financial miracles while neglecting the simple acts of order, budgeting, saving, and working diligently. But the same God who multiplied the loaves also told the disciples to gather the leftovers. Order is not the opposite of faith, it is its partner. Throughout Scripture, money is treated not as an idol, but as an instrument. Proverbs 21:5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance." That's not a motivational quote. It's a divine formula. God doesn't bless random motion. He blesses wise preparation. Every business, every household, every ministry that thrives has one thing in common: a system that honors God's wisdom of diligence, patience, and integrity. In today's language, that means having a clear vision for your money and your business. You can't make money multiply if you don't know its purpose. God's economy is built on intentionality. He entrusts more to those who understand why they have what they have. Think of Joseph in Egypt. He didn't become powerful because of a miracle. He became powerful because he had a plan during the years of plenty. Strategy was his act of worship. This hidden pattern, order before overflow, is God's silent law of prosperity. It's why He instructs His people to give the first fruits, not leftovers. When your finances are aligned with heaven's order, even small beginnings carry supernatural weight. That's when $100 starts to behave like $1,000, and $1,000 becomes the seed for $10,000. God blesses movement, but only when it's structured. And here's where it gets even deeper. Before He multiplies your resources, He multiplies your wisdom. Many pray for the harvest without realizing that divine increase always follows divine understanding. You don't receive wealth to learn discipline. You learn discipline to receive wealth. And that right there is the pattern most people never see. The same one that leads directly into the next revelation. Why the first $10,000 is more spiritual than financial. Why the first $10,000 is more spiritual than financial. The world teaches that money is purely material, but the Bible constantly shows it as a mirror of the heart. The first $10,000 you save or earn isn't just a financial milestone. It's a spiritual awakening. It represents self-control, stewardship, and trust in divine timing. When God sees that you can manage $10,000 with integrity, He knows you're ready for greater things. Just as Luke 16:10 says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." This first financial threshold is where faith meets wisdom. It's the point where you stop asking God for provision and start collaborating with Him through obedience. You begin to realize that God doesn't drop wealth from the sky, He deposits it through discipline. That's why the first $10,000 feels like a spiritual test. It reveals whether your faith is emotional or practical. When your bank account starts reflecting biblical order, heaven takes notice. The shift happens internally long before the numbers change. People who reach their first $10,000 often describe a deeper sense of peace, purpose, and partnership with God. That's because they're learning to manage what they once prayed for. This process transforms anxiety into assurance. Like Joseph in prison, who prepared even while waiting for promotion, you begin to see saving and investing not as fear, but as faith in action. Spiritually, this stage destroys idolatry. You stop worshiping money and start mastering it. You no longer see wealth as a measure of worth, but as a tool for business generosity and impact. That's why Deuteronomy 8:18 says, "Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the power to get wealth." That verse doesn't promise riches, it promises empowerment. And power always comes with responsibility. When you build your first $10,000 with patience, it's not just your balance that grows. It's your identity. You're becoming the type of person who chooses long-term purpose over short-term pleasure. Each dollar saved is an act of defiance against chaos, fear, and impulse. It's saying, I trust God's process more than my emotions. That's a declaration of faith disguised as financial wisdom. So, while the world celebrates material success, heaven celebrates maturity. God isn't impressed by big bank accounts. He's moved by faithful hearts that handle small blessings well. The first $10,000 isn't about stacking cash. It's about proving character. And that character becomes the foundation for the next dimension of blessing, where peace and provision begin to intertwine in ways the world can't explain. The biblical psychology of peace and provision. True wealth isn't about having more. It's about worrying less. The Bible often connects peace with provision because God never intended money to be a source of torment. In Philippians 4:6-7, Paul teaches, "Do not be anxious about anything, and the peace of God which transcends all understanding will guard your hearts and your minds." That peace isn't the result of having $10,000. It's the mindset that allows you to build it. When your finances are guided by faith instead of fear, your heart becomes stable enough for God to trust with increase. The psychology of peace in Scripture is deeply practical. God doesn't promise a life without problems, but He promises wisdom that neutralizes panic. Financial anxiety often comes from unpredictability, but divine wisdom introduces order into uncertainty. When you know that your money is under God's authority, you stop reacting and start responding. This mental calm isn't laziness, it's holy confidence. It's what separates those who chase provision from those who attract it through alignment. Neuroscience says that lower stress levels lead to better decision-making. The Bible said it first. Proverbs 17:27 teaches, "The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered." The peaceful person manages both his tongue and his wallet. When you're calm, you spend wisely. When you're panicked, you overextend. That's why God trains believers not just to earn money, but to think like stewards, not survivors. Look at Jesus during the storm in Mark 4. While the disciples screamed in fear, He slept. The difference wasn't circumstance, it was certainty. Jesus knew that peace is the atmosphere of power. When you walk in peace, provision follows because your actions flow from faith, not desperation. That's the biblical psychology behind why some believers seem to prosper steadily. They operate from rest, not restlessness. Peace is also the currency of clear thinking. Many people sabotage their own business opportunities because fear clouds their judgment. But when your spirit is anchored, you start to recognize divine timing. You don't rush investments, you don't chase trends, and you don't fall for financial traps. You operate from spiritual clarity that naturally leads to material stability. Peace is a form of wealth no inflation can touch. The secret most people miss is this: God doesn't just want to give you provision. He wants to make you peaceful enough to manage it. Anxiety drains resources, calm multiplies them. The moment your heart finds peace in His promises, your hands start building wisely. And this is where God begins shifting you from mere survival into stewardship, the next stage of divine prosperity. From scarcity to stewardship, learning to manage God's resources. Scarcity isn't a financial condition, it's a spiritual perception. Many people believe they lack because they look at their wallet instead of their source. The Bible repeatedly teaches that everything we possess already belongs to God. We're simply managers of His assets. Psalm 24:1 reminds us, The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it. When this truth finally sinks in, fear of lack loses its grip. You stop acting like an owner defending what's yours and start thinking like a steward multiplying what's his. The move from scarcity to stewardship begins with gratitude. Thankfulness shifts the mind from "I don't have enough" to "God has trusted me with something." That mindset alone unlocks creativity. Suddenly, you see opportunities in what once looked ordinary. The widow in 2 Kings 4 thought she had nothing, until the prophet pointed to the oil in her house. God didn't give her new resources, he opened her eyes to manage the old ones differently. That's stewardship. Stewardship also demands structure. Proverbs 27:23 advises, "Be diligent to know the state of your flocks, and attend to your herds." In today's language, that means track your money, understand your expenses, and plan your business with wisdom. You can't pray for harvest and ignore the field. Stewardship is not about having more. It's about doing more with what you already have. When you honor the small, you prepare for the overflow. This is where financial maturity and spiritual maturity meet. God doesn't multiply chaos. If your budget leaks, he won't fill it faster. He'll teach you to patch the holes. Stewardship means accountability, not austerity. It's knowing where every dollar goes because you understand that every dollar carries purpose. That's why Jesus praised the servant who multiplied talents, not for profit, but for faithfulness. Moving from scarcity to stewardship is the moment you stop chasing money and start commanding it. You begin telling your finances where to go instead of asking where they went. You start giving strategically, saving intentionally, and investing prayerfully. This isn't greed, it's governance. God called believers to dominion, and dominion requires discipline. When you finally grasp that you are managing heaven's property on earth, even $10 feels sacred. Every purchase becomes a declaration of purpose, every seed sown a statement of faith. And once you master this principle, you'll be ready to uncover one of the Bible's most practical financial secrets: how Proverbs and Joseph anticipated the modern emergency fund long before banks ever existed. The power of the emergency fund in Proverbs. Long before financial advisors talked about emergency funds, the Bible had already established the principle through wisdom and foresight. Proverbs 6:8 says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest." That's not just good advice, it's divine economics. The ant doesn't store because it fears tomorrow. It stores because it understands seasons. Likewise, building an emergency fund isn't about hoarding. It's about honoring God's rhythm of preparation before provision. Joseph embodied this principle on a national scale. In Genesis 41, God gave him the revelation to store grain during 7 years of abundance to survive the 7 years of famine. That wasn't luck or intuition. It was stewardship guided by revelation. When others consumed everything they had, Joseph managed excess with purpose. The result? Egypt thrived while others begged. That's what happens when wisdom meets discipline. Money becomes a shield instead of a source of stress. An emergency fund in today's world is one of the most biblical financial tools you can build. It protects your peace, preserves your dignity, and prevents panic. When the car breaks down, the medical bill comes, or the job shifts, your faith isn't shaken because your foundation is secure. Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down." The wise plan for tomorrow, not out of fear, but out of faith that God will continue to bless what's managed well. There's a spiritual humility in saving. It's admitting that we don't control everything, but we can prepare for anything. God expects his people to anticipate, not react. Just as Noah built the ark before the rain, believers should build their savings before the storm. This is not a lack of faith, it's the manifestation of it. Faith builds before the flood. Imagine what changes when you have even $10,000 saved for emergencies. Suddenly, life's interruptions lose their power. You don't panic when the unexpected happens, you plan. That fund becomes your modern ark, carrying you safely through financial storms. And in that peace, you begin to hear God more clearly, make decisions more wisely, and live more freely. When you live this way, money becomes your servant, not your master. And once your safety net is strong, God can trust you to take greater leaps of faith, because your stability honors him. That's when the principle of the emergency fund evolves into something greater, using that foundation to walk into new opportunities and divine callings with courage and clarity. Faith in action. How $10,000 opens doors for purpose and calling. Faith without action is wishful thinking, but faith with strategy becomes transformation. The Bible never separates belief from behavior. James 2:17 reminds us, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. That's why reaching your first $10,000 is not just a financial event, it's the moment where invisible faith becomes visible fruit. It proves you can partner with God in building stability, not by luck, but by obedience. And once that foundation is set, new opportunities start to unfold, because heaven trusts prepared vessels. With $10,000, your money begins to speak the language of purpose. Suddenly, you have the flexibility to act on divine impulses instead of being trapped by financial limitations. You can invest in a business God placed on your heart, fund a ministry idea, or relocate for a calling without panic. Provision creates permission. The moment your needs are covered, your heart is freed to focus on God's will, not on survival. This principle is reflected in Acts 4:34, where it says, "There were no needy persons among them." Why? Because those who had resources shared, and those who lacked found strength in the community of faith. When God blesses your finances, it's not just to elevate your comfort, it's to expand your capacity to contribute. Your $10,000 becomes a weapon against stagnation, empowering you to bless others and take spirit-led risks. Purpose thrives where peace exists. Most believers never pursue their calling fully because they're financially enslaved to fear. But once you've built a foundation, faith becomes actionable. You can take that course, write that book, start that project, or help that family. That's how the kingdom grows, through ordinary people who manage money extraordinarily well. Your savings give you space to hear God clearly and obey Him swiftly. This phase also teaches a deeper humility. The point isn't to idolize the $10,000. It's to realize it's a tool for testimony. God can't trust everyone with influence, but He can trust those who've learned to handle resources with reverence. Remember the boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. His offering was small, but it was ready, and God multiplied it to feed thousands. What's in your account today could be what God uses to feed nations tomorrow. When your finances serve your faith, heaven responds with acceleration. The same discipline that built your foundation becomes the channel God uses to expand your mission. You stop asking, "God, bless my plans," and start saying, "God, I'm ready for yours." And that's the moment where true prosperity begins, when you're no longer chasing money but walking in divine purpose. Because at this stage, something even greater starts to happen. God begins shaping you into the kind of person He can trust with more. Becoming the kind of person God can trust with more. Wealth in God's kingdom isn't earned, it's entrusted. The real question isn't whether you can make money, but whether you can manage it without losing your mission. In Luke 16:11, Jesus asks, "If you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches?" That verse cuts deep because it reveals God's priority. Character over cash, stewardship over status. Before God gives more, He ensures that more won't destroy you. When someone reaches their first $10,000, God is watching not the balance, but the behavior. Do you give faithfully? Do you spend wisely? Do you still depend on Him daily? These questions determine your capacity for the next level. In God's economy, money is the training ground for greater influence. How you handle what's in your hands today reveals whether heaven can place more in them tomorrow. Becoming the kind of person God can trust with abundance means mastering contentment. Paul said in Philippians 4:12, "I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation." That contentment doesn't mean complacency, it means clarity. You no longer chase what others have because you understand your purpose. When contentment replaces comparison, financial peace becomes permanent. Spiritual maturity also transforms how you view increase. You stop asking, "How can I make more?" and start asking, "How can I serve better?" That's the mindset of kingdom entrepreneurs. They see business as ministry and money as ministry fuel. The tithe becomes gratitude, not obligation. Investments become instruments of impact, not ego. God can trust those who use wealth to build people, not platforms. At this stage, generosity becomes your signature. You begin to see giving not as subtraction but as multiplication. The more you release, the more God refills. Because He can trust the flow, you become a divine distributor, a channel through which blessings move freely. Proverbs 11:25 confirms it. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. The promise isn't for those who hoard, but for those who steward. When God finds a trustworthy steward, He releases resources that carry responsibility. You're no longer just praying for blessings. You're managing systems of them. Your $10,000 was just the test, but your next season is the testimony. Because now, God isn't only blessing what you have, He's blessing who you've become. And that's where this journey leads. Not to richer pockets, but to richer purpose. If you've followed this message to the end, you've probably realized something deeper. Wealth in God's kingdom is never about accumulation. It's about transformation. Every financial principle in the Bible points back to the same truth. God doesn't bless numbers. He blesses nature, the kind of person you're becoming. Your $10,000 is just the outer evidence of an inner change. It's the sign that you've learned to govern, not just to gain. As you grow in wisdom, remember that prosperity isn't measured by how much money you hold, but by how much peace you keep while holding it. The world will always chase more, but God calls His people to manage better. Whether you're earning your first $100 or your first $100,000, the same law applies. Faithfulness in the small prepares you for abundance in the great. Write in the comments, "My next $10,000 will glorify God." And watch how this powerful declaration begins to shift the course of your business and your finances from this day forward. Now it's your turn to act. Don't just admire the wisdom, apply it. Set your financial foundations in order. Build that emergency fund. Tithe with joy. Save with strategy. And most importantly, invite God into every financial decision. You'll be amazed at how spiritual clarity begins to produce material stability. So let me ask you, what would happen if you started managing your finances as if heaven were your shareholder? What kind of opportunities could open if God saw you as a trustworthy partner in His economy? If this message spoke to your spirit, consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description. Subscribe to the channel and activate the notifications to keep learning how to walk in divine prosperity. Because the moment you take stewardship seriously, wealth stops being something you pursue and starts being something that follows you.